Another edition of Riding Home. Dean Legge and Matt DeBary from Dog Post, making you a smarter Georgia fan. Matt, Kirby Smart yesterday made a lot of people remember just how good he is at recruiting Georgia, finishing with 25 overall prospects who have signed and are in the boat. And then another number one class. This is the only two programs have had consensus top three classes in the last 4 years. That's Georgia and Alabama. And now Georgia with two out of the last three number one classes in the country.
Yeah, I think when we look back at this class, we're going to look back at offense. It was very heavy on offense. 25 total guys, 12 of them are from the combined 7 offensive line commits and 5 wide receiver commits. So the wide receiver and offensive line make up just about half of the total class. Yeah. Obviously, 7 might sound like a lot, but you look back to the 2018 class, Jamari Sawyer is still here. He might leave after this year. Obviously, Cade Mays is no longer on the team. Warren Erickson has played some. And then Trey Hill is a guy who's a multi-year starter. The 3 guys they signed in 2019, Xavier Truss, Warren McClendon, and Clay Webb, they didn't see hardly any action last year. We'll see. I mean, they came in with Pittman. You never know if one of their, or maybe 2 of those guys might transfer. So they definitely needed to add a lot of depth on the offensive line. They brought in 7, including 2 of the top tackles in the country. And then at wide receiver, they added so much speed. We've talked about it for a while now. Arian Smith, one of the fastest prospects in the country. Jermaine Burton, I think the most complete wide receiver in this class. Marcus Rosemy and Justin Robinson, 2 big possession guys you can put on the outside. And then a little 3-star surprise at the end, Ladd McConkey, a guy you can mix around, probably going to be the slot guy, third down kind of machine in the middle of the field who can also return punts and kicks. So very offense heavy, like we said. They filled the secondary with speed, Keely Ringo, Jalen Kimber, one linebacker, a really good one, and Mikael Sherman, and then a lot of athletic big bodies along the defensive line. So not to mention possibly the quarterback of the future, guy who might be your backup this year in Carson Beck, and 2 running backs who could see a lot of playing this year, especially 5-star Kendall Milton, who we've talked a lot about too. So it's very good class, but especially on the offensive side of the ball, in a few years, you're going to be looking at this 2020 class and seeing a lot of these guys make a big impact, especially on offense.
The interesting thing, too, here as I battle through the cold that I'm dealing with, they will bring in 25 guys. And most programs in the SEC are, quote, young. That's a common thing. So people shouldn't get so excited that Georgia has about, just by my quick math, right now they have 88 guys on scholarship. And that includes the 25 that they just signed, the 11 redshirt freshmen, and the 19 true freshmen. 19 sophomore coming in next year. That's 55%. That's 55 of their roster. So about 65% of their entire roster are younger guys, and that's not abnormal. But Matt, the thing about it is that there's no one that. Well, two points real quick. I would like your reaction about this. There is no particular player on this team that I see that has to come in and start. In fact, I would argue that it's going to be tough for the vast majority of this team, of this signing class to start. And then secondly, and maybe you can riff on this a little bit, this class, as the number one class in the country, missed on plenty of players. It could have been even better than it was. And secondly, I don't see this as good as the 2018 class. So why don't you start with my, soliloquy about them not probably. There's not a lot of starters immediately in this group.
Well, I think
in 2020.
Yeah, I think you're right. Obviously, Kendall Milton is going to get some touches. The receivers are going to see an opportunity to get on the field early. Someone has to step up and be that number 2 opposite George Pickens, especially with Don Blaylock recovering from the ACL.
That's probably the spot where, if not there and Keely Ringo.
Well, I was going to say Darnell Washington because there's no tight end like him on the offense. If anyone is looking like, hey, I can really come in here and be the guy if I really push myself and work my butt off until the season gets here, it's Darnell Washington. he and Trey McKitty, who I think is going to see the field a
Well,
lot too. So
but Trey McKitty, I mean, I know you're not. I'm strictly when I made that statement, I was strictly talking about the
the
25
incoming
signees.
freshman,
Correct. I mean,
right,
obviously
right.
McKitty, Newman, those are two guys that have a very good opportunity in front of them to start.
Yeah, I think Kelee Ringo is going to play because I think he's probably pound for pound the best prospect in this class, in my opinion. He's going to see the field, not in a position where they need him to start or anything like that, but they do rotate a good amount of defensive backs. And once he gets that playbook down, I think his athleticism will take over and they're going to want to put him out there. But to go to your second point, I mean, if a year ago today, if the Georgia staff looked at this class, they wouldn't say it's perfect or ideal at all. I mean, they went out and recruited a lot of guys hard in this class that they didn't get
That's
compared
right.
to 2018 and 2019.
That's right.
So I've got Brian Breesy, who they were really in it for this time last year. He made an early commitment, but Georgia came in second there. Eric Gilbert was a guy they targeted for a long, long time since the very beginning. Didn't get him. They recruited Miles Murphy hard. He went to Clemson. A lot of guys, Noah Sewell that came in second for,
Yeah.
Cartavis Bigsby, they did recruit. Now they might have wanted Zach Evans more, but they did put the time in and recruit Cartavis Bigsby. He chose somewhere else. Zykevious Walker, a guy who I thought was going to go to Georgia, chose Auburn. So I wouldn't say they missed on these guys because they did recruit them. It's not like they were really good players and Georgia just didn't think they were and didn't recruit them or anything. They went after these guys. They targeted them.
Well, I don't know what.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know what the term miss means. I mean, what I mean by miss is what you're about to describe. They didn't get them.
They just didn't get them. They didn't get them, and they still found a way to get the number one class. But boy, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't ideal, and I do think the 2018 and 2019 class is probably a little bit better. I don't want to say Georgia had to settle for some kids. That's not how I want it to come across. But they weren't going to end up with guys like Cameron Kinney and probably Ladd McConkey and Darren Branch if they would have gotten some of their guys that they wanted to, earlier in the process. And so while it's a very good class and it's still the number one class in the country, it's not like they got to pick and choose which guy they want and, got everyone, again, that they wanted compared to what they did in 2018 and 2019 and to a certain degree the 2017 class. So Clemson and Alabama, mostly Clemson, they went out and they got pretty much every guy they wanted. And that's what Kirby was able to do in 18 and 19. And he still got a fair amount of those guys in this class, especially out of state. But yeah, there were plenty of guys that they targeted hard and recruited, heavily, and they just didn't get. And you don't see it a ton from this Georgia staff, and but it did happen a little bit this year. There's no doubt about it.
What does it mean that? Well, essentially, this has gotten down to Clemson. Clemson has not recruited like Georgia and Alabama. They've recruited well. They've had 3 straight years of top 10, but they have not recruited the way that that Georgia and Alabama have. I mean, for instance, in last year's class, they were narrowly a top 10 team. So my question though is, what does it mean? And I think I asked you this while I was driving yesterday. What does it mean that Georgia didn't get some of the guys that they really wanted? Like Clemson, you're saying nailed every single kid they wanted.
Essentially, there wasn't anyone that I know of that had a solid, committable offer to Clemson and said, no, I'll go somewhere else. I could be wrong there, but
well, I mean, they didn't get the guys that they wanted that Georgia got. I mean, you can't tell me they didn't want Mikael Sherman. You can't tell me they didn't want Chris Milton. Excuse me,
right.
Milton or Kylie Ringo and guys like that. But off the Clemson thing, what does it mean that? What does it mean, or does it matter that Georgia didn't get everyone they wanted / targeted, and they still wound up at number 1? What does that mean? I mean, if for comparison's sake, Clemson got everybody they wanted and they wound up at 3, what does it mean that Georgia and I guess Bama didn't get everybody they wanted and they still wound up in front of Clemson with consensus rankings?
Well, it says that Georgia does have arguably the best staff in the country. I don't want to say it's damage control, but they always have a plan B, and they're just relentless.
They do.
They miss on a guy, they'll go out and they make sure to get the next guy. They go to the next guy on their board and they make it an effort. So they're relentless. I mean, they're not going to stop, and they know how to close.
There's no question they know how to close. but they turned Zach Evans away.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Yeah, I
still,
think it could have been twice. Once in
yeah,
September, once around then. But yeah, if they wanted Zach Evans, they would do everything. Kirby would have done whatever it took to get him if they wanted him. But I think he said it in the press conference. I don't know if he was replying or talking about Evans in a certain way, but they went after a lot of good, solid kids off the football field in this class. Everyone that we met, for the most part, most of them, I'd say, great, outstanding kids with no issues off the field. And so overall, I think you're not only bringing high quality guys on the field, but for the most part, they're high quality kids off. And I think that's what they're looking at, uh, really hard. You have to bring in talent, but you have to bring in good kids who want to be at Georgia and aren't gonna, transfer after 1 year. You can never see down the road and look into the future, but a lot of these kids are just looking to start and play right away, or get homesick. You have to. The staff takes all that into consideration, but I mean, they went out, they missed on some kids, and they went and got the next best guy on their board, and they got guys for their system, especially when Todd Monken came in. They went out and got a guy like
yeah.
Ladd McConkey who fits the system. All the guys in the secondary fit Kirby's, system and style of play. That's what he concentrates on. And, they only need one linebacker. They went out and got him. Would have taken Noah Sewell with the second linebacker. They didn't get him, and they did not end up signing someone in his place. They used that spot elsewhere. But for the most part, they went in and, I don't want to say damage control, but it kind of is the way that they are. But again, it goes back to them just being relentless and showing how good they are on the recruiting trail once again.
I think the one guy that they may regret not moving quicker with was Tank Bigsby. He seems super self motivated, and we'll see. With that said, you know, they already had Milton in the. I'm trying to remember, when did we visit Tank in the spring? Was Milton
It,
already
it
committed?
was in February. I
Yeah,
think Kendall Milton committed
yeah,
2 or 3 months later.
yeah, he was in July. But Tank is a heck of a running back and a prospect, and you can't know for sure with guys. But that would be the one guy that sticks out to me that maybe if they had pushed harder, because with Tank, I mean, Tank didn't really know if they were recruiting him as a running back at the time, or at you know
They talked to him about DB, and he
yeah,
told
talk
us
to him
that
about
when we were
DB.
there.
Yeah, so that's the one guy, but that's being enormously nitpicky. And when you sign a kid, sign a class the way that they did, again, it's not as good as the 18 class was in my view. But the point of all of this is to stack up as many classes with high end players as you can. Georgia, I think, is 33-3 in the regular season the last 3 years. That's not by accident. That is as much about recruiting as anything. And now it's about taking it to the next level in championship games. When you look at, essentially, especially the SEC championship game and beyond, it's important for the players who are big time players to play big in those big moments. And in the last SEC championship game, DeAndre Swift basically didn't play, and it's
Right.
hard to be who you are without one of, I mean, your most explosive playmaker. I mean, when he's banged up like that, Jake Fromm didn't have the game that he wanted in the LSU game. So that now is the hurdle to get past. But and maybe I'm too optimistic about Georgia generally speaking, but these numbers don't lie after a while. And number one classes lead to national championships. It's always been the case, with very few exceptions. It's been the case the last 20 years. Auburn caught lightning in the bottle in 2010. Clemson did it without a number one class, but nobody has the path Clemson has either. So everybody in the SEC has had a national championship come after a 1, 2, or 3 ranking in consensus recruiting rankings. And look, you look at the board here, and again they've got right this second, and this is not gospel, but They have 88 guys on scholarship. So 3 of the people who are quote unquote on the team right now, they won't be around in August. People may already know about that. Maybe something that's going to happen and we don't know it. Kirby and them know what's going on. They were going to sign 25 the entire time. Clearly, you and I thought it was anywhere from 23 to 24, 25. We thought more 24 than 25, but they have the entire roster full, and they have really good players. There are places where you can nitpick. There are places where, at Alabama, Clemson, and certainly LSU, you can look at all 3 of their rosters and say, hey, there's some issues here or there. But Georgia's as talented as anyone in the country. Period.
Yeah, everyone wants to talk about the number 1 team rankings and this and that, but a lot of these kids eventually are going to hit the portal. Georgia finished with the number 1 ranking in 2018. A lot of that had to do with Justin Fields, who's no longer on the team, Brenton Cox, who's no longer on the team, Otis Reese was highly ranked, Luke Ford was the number 1 tight end prospect in the country. So it's hard to tell how good this class is until a couple years down the road when they actually play, and how many of these kids actually play for 3 or 4 years. But nowadays, when you can transfer and get immediate eligibility just after 1 year, it's tough to really look back and say, oh, this team did this in recruiting 3 years ago,
It's
just
tougher.
to come find out that so many of those guys left after 1 or 2 years anyway. So
it's tougher, but attrition has always been a part of college football.
And probably more than ever.
More than ever, for sure.
Yeah.
But
what you said, 3 straight recruiting rankings at number 1, that's it's not a surprise, and it should lead to bigger and better things.
Not number 1. They've been. There's no program in the country who's finished in the top 3 in the last 4 years except Georgia. Now, Let me make sure that what I'm saying is absolutely correct. 17, number 3. 18, number 1. 19, number 2, and 20, number 1. So, they have recruited very, very well. Ohio State has done really well. Alabama has done really well. And Texas has not done that bad. You can't compare Texas to Ohio State and Georgia. Texas is a disaster right now. So it is what you do with kids too. So this is we've set all this up to say, this program is on the precipice, and now it's time to turn the engine and get the car into the garage, for lack of a better term, so you can have a party. They just need to raise the trophies.
Get in the garage, have a party, get a trophy. That's what it's all about, right?
It's pretty simple. I mean,
recruiting matters.
Recruiting matters more than any other aspect of college football. Coaches come and go. Recruiting is an all year long thing. If you're just, if you're this many minutes into this broadcast or podcast, whatever you want to call it, this show, and you don't know my 20-year history talking about recruiting, and the 4 years before that when I played very poorly in college and saw firsthand why talent matters, whether you were playing basketball or tennis or football or whatever, it matters because you can't replicate it. You can, in basketball, we would say you can teach defense. It's tough to teach offense. You want a guy that can put it in the basket. It is tough to make Brendan Douglas DeAndre Swift. And that is the thing. Now, what you do with it from that point forward, coaches are always going to be criticized, period. It's what it is. It's the world we live in.
Real quick, I do want to say, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this don't care about the 21 class just yet. Maybe in a few months they'll start doing the research on that. But
they obviously care. I mean, this audience has grown dramatically. We are really appreciative of everyone listening to us, and they're learning more. They're becoming smarter Georgia fans.
That's great because, I like this class, and Georgia's going to make another shot at that number 1 class the way it's going right now in 21. So stick around for that. We'll see a lot of guys coming off the board this spring and this summer, and it feels like a lot of them are trending towards Georgia. They should, and I guess are expected to now to bring in a top 3 class and, again, push for that number 1 spot in 2020 the way things are looking right now.
And Brock Vandergriff is the guy to watch in this class. Like, he has the most potential.
Oh, I think Amarius Mims does too. I think Amarius Mims is probably the top player in the state, and then Brock Vandegrift number two. But he's going to be the leader of this class. 5-star quarterback from right outside Athens. He can go on campus whenever he wants, when any type of visitors are there to hang out. That's a big deal, and we talked about that at length already. But when you have a 5-star quarterback on board this early, leading a class, good things usually happen.
Dean Legge and Matt DeBary, make sure to click above to watch yesterday's press conference with Kirby. We will catch you over on Dog Post. Make sure to subscribe.